Good morning, students. I welcome you to the class once again. Students, in today's class, we are going to do the thematic analysis of the novel Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I hope that you have gone through the novel as I provided you the text in the group. Students, when we analyze the novel, we find social mobility to be one of the themes that we can find in the novel. Students, critics have suggested that social mobility is the primary theme in most of the Austen's novels, and this idea seems especially apparent in Mansfield Park. Students, in the opening chapter, in which the three Ward sisters marry men of very different social categories, fixes this construct as the novel's primary theme. Maria Ward moves above her designated social station by marrying the Baronet Sir Thomas Bertram of Mansfield Park. Mrs. Norris marries at a more socially appropriate station. The youngest sister marries a common sailor, Mr. Price, who in future become an unemployed drunkard. Austen utilizes this triad to illustrate that high morals do not necessarily come with high social standing, and that people born into lower social ranks should be given the opportunity to move through their moral behavior. Students, as we have seen that Lady Bertram has 4 children, and her oldest son Tom Bertram moves to London, where he finds himself corrupted by city life. As a gambler, he drinks to excess and causes his father so much financial hardship that he is forced to go to Antigua to oversee his financial investments in the island's plantation. Lady Bertram's daughters are spoiled, they are selfish, and act immorally. Her daughter Maria, who is married, goes so far as to run away with Henry Crawford. Her youngest son Edmund, although a minister, is distracted by his desire for Mary Crawford that he forgets his upbringing and his own moral imperative for impeccable social behavior. Mrs. Norris has no children, but she is implicated in the fate of the Bertram children because she had great influence over them when they were young. Students, we see that it is Fanny Price, one of the 9 children fathered by the drunken sailor, who proves to be the character in the novel with the highest moral standards. From early on in the novel, Fanny is portrayed as shy, retiring, and helpful to all. Patience to a fault, she never complains, she has the ability to see through the people, and possesses an innate capability to determine right from wrong. In time, everyone comes to admire her. No one objects to her marrying her social superior, Henry Crawford, but Fanny refuses, although she knows her life would be far easier if she agreed. In keeping with Austen's theme of social mobility for the deserving, it is hardly surprising that Fanny winds up the daughter-in-law of a baronet who could in time even come to replace Lady Bertram as the mistress of Mansfield Park. Students, the next theme that could be discerned in this novel is that Jane Austen brings out the evils of primogeniture. The British aristocratic social system embraces the concept of primogenitor, the right of the firstborn child to inherit the parents' entire estate. Students, through her novels, Austen examines and criticizes this aristocratic class system. Since the privileged oldest son inherited the entire estate under primogeniture, the younger sons were forced to do something for themselves, and usually they enlisted in the army or the navy or sought careers in the law or cavalry. Girls were viewed as financial assets when they married to advantage, and as heiress only when they had no brothers. As the old Bertram, the profligate Tom Bertram, who drinks and gambles too much in London, will become the next Sir Thomas, while his younger brother Edmund is slated for the clergy. No one even considers the possibility that Tom might not inherit the estate, despite the fact that his behavior causes the family great financial hardship and necessitates his father's trip to Antigua to oversee his financial investments in the island's plantation. Clearly, Edmund would make a better baronet and lord of the manor. Daughters are expected to marry within their social strata, and Maria Bertram scores high social points in this regard for marrying the insipid and boring Mr. Rushworth, one of the richest men in the country. Students, we have seen that Austen uses character of Tom Bertram to bring the inherent problems of primogenitor system to light. Sir Thomas' forced departure to manage his investment leaves his children without any real supervision and ultimately results in grievous events that deeply affect his daughters' lives. As a result of Tom's profligacy, Sir Thomas cannot afford to hold the parsonage position for Edmund, who is not yet an ordained minister. Instead, he is forced out of financial necessity to let the position go to Dr. Grant, an action which allows for the introduction of Mrs. Grant's younger siblings, the highly immoral Mary Crawford and Henry Crawford, who in time come to infect Mansfield. Edmund must remove himself from Mansfield to take a lesser job at a poor parsonage. Clearly, the wrong brother has the power, while the more deserving Edmund is helpless to do anything about it. Edmund's only other option are to join the Navy as an officer or to enter the legal or medical profession, jobs that Edmund would hardly find suitable or rewarding. Students, when we go through the novel, we see that Jane Austen has juxtaposed town and country in her novel. Although everything changes at the bucolic Mansfield Park after Henry and Mary Crawford arrive from London, the meeting between the country Bertrams and town Crawfords is far more than a plot device intended to justify the novel's action. Students, indeed, the introduction of the new arrivals demonstrates the ongoing tension between modernity and traditional values. We have seen Mary demonstrate how to touch she is out of touch with the rural need of the farmers to harvest the hay by selfishly insisting upon obtaining a wagon merely to transport for her harp. Time is of essence, and all vehicles are necessary for this vital project. She believes that given enough money she can have her way, but fails to realize that if the hay isn't brought in while the weather is right, people might not eat for the entire winter. Edmund, like Fanny, is put off by her selfish attitude, but his better judgment is cast aside by his attraction for this lovely lady. And we have also seen that although Mary's brother Henry is heir to a country estate, he is continually absent. Henry would have been abhorred by the early 19th century readers as an absentee landlord who spends the proceeds from his farm estate to live the high life of fun and frolic while his tenants and property are neglected. Henry is thus also ignorant of the needs of rural life. Students, in Mansfield Park, we see Fanny is transformed from poor 9-year-old to the daughter of Mansfield Park and the wife of Mansfield Prince Edmund Bertram. Fanny arrives at Mansfield Park as a disheveled, impoverished relation and is made to feel unwelcome by her cousins, except Edmund. Although she doesn't have to literally clean out the ashes from the fireplace as the fairy tale Cinderella did, Fanny nevertheless must be at the beck and call of her relatives and provide constant care for Lady Bertram. With the exception of the trip to the Southerton estate, Fanny is never allowed to leave and thus could be viewed as a prisoner at Mansfield Park. Since Mrs. Norris is responsible for the day-to-day running of Mansfield, she takes on the evil stepmother role, treats Fanny as a servant, and generally makes the young girl's life miserable. The Bartum girls, who represent the fairy tale evil stepsisters, denigrating young Fanny because she doesn't have fashionable clothes, and are favored by the evil Mrs. Norris due to their higher social rank. Students, unlike Cinderella, Fanny doesn't seem to have a fairy godmother. She must develop her own skills to find her way in the world, and soon becomes an idealized daughter figure to Lady Bertram and Sir Bertram, whose own two daughters fail to make sensible decisions, especially concerning men. After Maria and Julia leave for London, Fanny attends her first ball, an affair thrown in her honor by Sir Thomas. When she leads the dance, all eyes are cast upon her because everyone realizes that over the time Fanny has come to look more and more like a beautiful princess. Fanny looks so captivating that Henry Crawford falls in love with her and asks her to wed. Fanny sees through him, unlike Sir Thomas, who locks her up in Portsmouth until she comes to her senses and accepts Henry's offer of marriage. Over time, the true Prince Edmund comes to rescue Fanny and takes her away from Portsmouth in a carriage. She returns to Mansfield with her lady-in-waiting Susan and is happily received by Sir Thomas and Lady Bertram, who have come to view Fanny as a royal daughter of Mansfield. By the end of the novel, students, we have seen Fanny has married the young Prince Edmund, while the evil Maria and Julia have been cast out into the dark world. Aunt Norris leaves as well, and all left at Mansfield Park live happily ever after. Students, the last theme that could be discerned in this novel is that Austen explored the complex relationship between manners and morality. Austen's view of manner is difficult to identify, in part because Austen's characters do not clearly define what they mean when they refer to manners. The meaning of manners in book becomes to be somewhat fluid, sometimes referring to knowledge of etiquette, sometimes to general politeness, sometimes to modesty or gratitude, or pleasantness of personality or social grace. Looked at more generally, the concept of manners in Mansfield Park refers to a series of expectations of a character's social conduct. So students, this much for today. Thank you very much.